Hello, everybody, and welcome to WTS 261. What's the story? 262. Correct myself. We're rusty. Yeah, my name is Danny Murray.
No, I'm Graham Merrigan.
Mero, it has been a while. It's been a minute since we last done one of these.
Been a minute. Everyone says that now, don't they? It's been a minute.
Yeah, it's been a minute. How are you keeping, my friend?
Good. I went back to the office today for the first time in over 2 years.
And how was the experience?
It was an enjoyable experience, one that I will be partaking in once every 2 weeks. Thank you.
Excellent, my friend. Excellent.
That's all I'm giving, once every 2 weeks.
I don't blame you. I'm a big fan of working from home. Big fan of working from home, and I think it's something that should stay forever and ever and ever and ever and ever and ever and ever. Amen. Mero, the last time you and I spoke on this podcast, we made the absolute classic mistake that we've only done once before of saying we have a doozy of a podcast lined up for you, and then it all went to shit.
As it always does. So we're not doing that anymore.
No, we're not. We're absolutely not giving any window into what's coming down the track, because the world we're living in is so unpredictable. I think it's been about 6 weeks. We had about four. I'm going to say 4.5, right? I'm going to say we have 4.5 podcasts lined up the last time we spoke.
That's very
every fucking one of them hit the skids on us, man. Through fucking COVID and stag do's and fucking all kinds of manner of illness and other shit hitting the fan. Every podcast we've tried to do over the last couple of... Well, look, it gave us a little bit of a break as well, and there's no harm in that. I mean...
We'll do what we want. We're an independent podcast. We
this
do
is
this
it.
for a hobby.
You know what I mean?
They're saturated podcast market. We are the best.
We don't have...
The best there is, the best there was, and the best there ever will be.
Up Bret the Hitman Hart. But we don't have to answer to Manscaped anymore, where we have to put out an episode every week. There's nobody to keep us honest anymore. We'll do what we want. We're Ireland's number one, and we'll do what we want, to paraphrase a football team that I don't like. Graham. We won't bother with preamble. Our guest is such an enjoyable fellow that I don't think we need to do any preamble. We'll just go straight into it.
Joining us now, we have the co-founder of the Tortoise Shack and presenter of the Eco Chamber podcast, Tony Groves. Thanks, Tony, for joining us.
Cheers, lads. Thanks. It's great to talk to you. So eventually. Yeah. No. And I put it mostly at my door, Mero, and thanks for your patience.
No, that's all right.
It's not Echo Chamber, Mero.
Yeah. No, it is. It is, but he said eco. You know, we let him away with it because it makes us sound more green.
It does. I like to pull Graham up on things when he gets them wrong. It's I put it on me hobbies and interests on my CV at this point. So I mean, but Tony, yeah, thanks a mil for joining us, man. It is great to finally get to chat to you, and I'm not putting any blame at your door. I'm putting it firmly at Merlow's door as the secretary of this podcast, responsible for putting guests. So, you know.
Yeah, look, I'll defer to you, so Danny.
Tony, the Tortoise Shack is growing and growing. I just have a list here of the podcast. The Reboot Republic, Glow West, Built Different, Converse Trans, that's a great name, and Policed, and
there's a few more, and we've sent.
I was going to say, is there any more to the list?
Yeah, no, we're working with a couple of women at the moment who are going to put out a really interesting take on breaking down academic jargon, as you know, like so stuff that we find, text that you find you can't really, it's inaccessible because it's hidden in all this academic jargon. They're going to do a few things on some important issues and break them down, and I'm working on that. And then obviously we sent other people off into the world, which is phenomenal. Like, when does this go out?
This weekend, so Saturday or Sunday, depending on when I get to edit.
So if you slide it out to someone, like the two Norries are on the late tomorrow night, and I did their first 50 episodes for those lads, you know. So yeah, so we we worked with them, we've worked with others, we've worked with Kieran Cunningham up in the house on last Saturday, working on the Daniel Kinahan first 3 episodes of that. Now again, it doesn't necessarily mean it's a Tortoise Shack production. It's not, but it's just kind of, it's that kind of
your pod producer.
Get along, give along, I suppose. You know what I mean? I much prefer actually the idea of, because you guys know this, when you're here, you're at it a few years, you're at it a while. you look around now and it's like, and everybody says Acast presents or Go Loud presents, and you're like, and they keep fucking emailing you, and excuse me, I hope I can swear on this, but they keep emailing you, and they're going, why don't you join us? Why don't, here's it, and you're like going, because I don't want to go to corporate route, and and it's great like that. But yeah, the Shack's an accident. You probably know that. Yeah, there was no intention to start it. It just kind of, we were talking just before we came on. You said the little room here, genuinely had a sulcata tortoise wandering around in it. And like a sulcata is the second largest land-based tortoise, like outside of a Galapagos. So like, but
brilliant,
but would knock the shite out of his lads. I mean, she was a beast, and she used to wander around, and we were recording with Izzy Kamikaze, who you might know, the wonderful activist and absolute trailblazer, and still at it. And she just turned around and she was sitting over there, and she said, this is back in the bloody tortoise shack. And I went, here we go.
Excellent. I didn't know that.
Yeah, so that was the origin story, totally accidental. But,
brilliant. What was I going to say to you? I've been at a couple of the live shows. That one recently. Now I didn't get to one on Easter Sunday, but prior to that, you had guests like Austin Carroll, and that was the first time I had met him. But I found that interview so engaging, so like you said, it kind of it's accessible. Like now, no pun intended, because Austin is a Paralympic hero, but it was like that with the was it Police that did the Stardust section?
Absolutely. Again,
that was so accessible. The solicitor there, Lynn Boylan there, absolutely brilliant content you're putting out.
It's quite funny because when we sat down, myself and Martin, I went out to him in Ashbourne and I said to him, I want to do a podcast, and he swear to God, he famously said back to me, what's a podcast? And I had to explain to him what it is, and he says, yeah, let's do it. And then we said when? I said Thursday. So Thursday evening, I'm downstairs watching the telly, and there's a knock on the door, and the other half says, who's that? And I said, it's Martin. She goes, what does he want? I said, I think he wants to do a podcast. And I pretended I knew nothing about it after me starting it,
Yeah.
So we did. But we knew that, like, to be honest, we knew that there was a gap for all of these talented people like Austin, like say the likes of Environmental, like Sinead Mercy, all these amazing people that we knew that weren't on the rotating column talk show, whatever the conveyor belt is. And we said we can talk to all of them. We can absolutely talk to all of them, and we started doing that. And
they're not people that would be on a Fianna Fáil women's conference.
Yeah, I mean, Jesus, like what a screw up. But I'll tell you where it's gone with this, Mero, if you don't mind. And so you just mentioned that straight away. My mentions fill up with people sending me private messages saying, Tony, will you put on the webinar of an alternative with a diverse panel of all of this sort of stuff? And we're at the stage now where it's like, actually, will we just take the Sugar Club again and step out of the way and have a so it's become something, the Tortoise Shack, that has given people a space where they'll come to me and they'll say, I want to do this, and gobshite here, I'll go, yeah, okay, let's and I'll step back and if it means doing the mixing desk, if it means doing the production, or if it does do it, I'll do that. But I don't want to sound like I had built it. I didn't build it. People built it. The people who contributed. Like I was looking today, the Echo Chamber is at episode 792.
Jesus, congratulations.
Unreal.
Yeah. And we're covering the assembly elections in Northern Ireland at the moment. I had the mayor of Belfast on, and she says to me, and again, the listeners, it's not letting anybody down. She said, I didn't think you were talking to me anymore. I think so. I didn't imagine the mayor of anywhere saying, I thought you were tick at me.
Yeah.
I'm like, why would I be tick at you? So no, it's a strange one, but we found the world was very flat, and you probably find that with podcasting, the world is very flat. You can get to people. If you go on Twitter and you go, like, we had Naomi Klein on, and I was like, who do we know who knows Naomi Klein? You're looking through, and all of a sudden, then you're going, okay, they'll get that, and then all of a sudden, Naomi Klein has followed you, and you go, oh my Christ, I've got Naomi Klein, and then now, not that we're always chasing, we don't chase people like that, but it was particularly relevant for a certain environmental thing we were chasing, because generally we'd prefer, Austin or like I had Don O'Leary last weekend from the Cork Life Centre, who is an absolute legend of a man. Flies a little bit under the radar, but not much prefer. It's unfair to other people, but I'm not chasing, celebrities, I suppose, in a way,
Yeah, that Fianna Fáil women's conference thing, women's health conference thing. I was listening to Liveline yesterday when Lisa Chambers was on it, and I mean, she was very apologetic. She was very like, "This is my fault," and we are going to work to improve it. Like, that's fine. And, there was, when I was listening, I did have a sense of empathy with her or of some sort. I was kind of like, okay, she's holding her hands up. But is the damage done in those situations when you've put out a post or you've put out a public? Is the damage done in as far as this is a political party and not one person in that political party thought this is not a diverse?
I'm going to get in trouble now for this one. Fianna Fáil are going to Fianna Fáil, but the people who put themselves on that panel should have stopped and asked who am I sitting beside. I mean, they should have very definitely, this controversy blew up a few years ago around repeal when they put on a thing in Trinity College, if people recall, and there was no people of colour, there was no people from minority backgrounds, and then they were scrambling to try and get someone in, and then all of a sudden it's tokenism. Hi, would you like to be the token person of colour? Would you like to be the token person with a disability or whatever the thing is? And I mean, we sat in the Sugar Club on Sunday and we had our first ever live Built Different. 3 young women, people of colour. They were on stage. I didn't give them. It's not me speaking for. It's their mic. It's their microphones. Their agenda. It's their forum. Likewise, when we did Conversate Trans, it was trans people talking to trans people about trans experiences. It wasn't that. So, that's not to say that I don't get things wrong. I get it wrong all the time. But I just don't think the people who were on that panel, who agreed to that panel, I don't cut them almost as much as I do Lisa Chambers, because she's a politician doing her job as a politician. The others should be looking around saying, who am I going to be sitting beside? Can I agree that before we actually see it? And then, and now there's going to be people backing out of that. You're going to, I know for a fact, they've approached people who I know and they're going, no, I'm not going to be your token person of color. So, that stuff, that damage is already done. Absolutely. But I spoke to Eileen Flynn, brilliant senator, traveller woman yesterday, and she has a lot of empathy for Lisa Chambers.
Yeah, she was on Liveline yesterday as well.
But one of the most interesting things was, I don't know if you saw it, was people who look like us lads, white middle-class men, were apologising for, were excusing Lisa Chambers yesterday on social media, including a prominent Labour TD, and you're thinking to yourself, going, it's not their place. Yeah. That it's not our place. I've made that mistake where I'm going to bat for a friend of mine, and you're going, well, actually what your friend did was quite shitty. And it's up to that community, whether maybe say you've offended a traveller community or something, it's up to that community to say it's okay. I don't get to say it because I'm from a position of privilege, and I didn't like that yesterday either.
Yeah, and I mean, it is a poor, speaking as somebody with a disability, I mean, it doesn't surprise me. And I think, people will say, and people on Liveline yesterday were saying, it's it's a poor reflection of, society and where we're at. But that is where we're at. That is, we've people like Fine Gael, Fianna Fáil, government parties, they don't really they don't really help people with disabilities. There's constant disability cuts. There's constantly carers cuts, and when you see posters like this or conferences and stuff like that, and something's missing, you're kind of going, well, I'm at the stage in my life now where I'm kind of going, yeah, that doesn't surprise me.
I don't know. I find it really hard because there's a hierarchy which shouldn't exist. It's almost this kind of level of, you look at it and you say, we're going to have these people on, and these people are eminently qualified. But if you can't get, say, someone who has a person with disability or a person of color or a person who from a minority background, you haven't tried. Because it goes back to what we're talking about, the tortoise shack. Literally, I'm looking around and I'm going to myself going, you know, I'm talking to people, I'm going, wow, why aren't you on X, Y, and Z? You know, and we often joked about it, saying to people, we're the bottom rung of the media ladder. And generally, without fail, someone would come on here, do a really excellent expose of whatever the topic was, and then the Tonight Show would ring or Claire Byrne would ring, and it was always the way. And I always felt sort of great about that. But I also think, you know, if a gobshite sitting in a small spare room at the side of his house on Ballymun Road can do that, why can't paid producers and the likes do that? It's just very frustrating. And when you're talking about the cuts to the wider conversation has to be had. A lot of this comes down to the type of society that we are building. And, you know, the one thing I don't know that Danny and Miro, if you see much of my thing, I don't hide my politics. Which I've never been shy about saying, you know, what I'm about, which is another criticism I have of other people in the media, where they go, you know, I'm playing it down the middle, and you're going, don't you write for X thing, or didn't you used to be a member of, or didn't you, all of that stuff, and they pretend it. So I actually prefer the fact that we actually say, no, this is us.
Yeah, it's something I constantly slag Mero about, over being unashamedly Sinn Féin and whatever. And it's weird, like, because I was actually talking to somebody about, kind of, just because we haven't put out an episode in a couple of weeks, this is a bit of a return for us after a little bit of a break, and I can't even remember how the conversation moved along to kind of look, we're not political experts by any stretch of the imagination, and we're never going to be able to solve anything big, deep, or meaningful for that matter. But they were saying it's kind of funny that, like, he was slagging me, saying, I remember you in college and your outlook now was completely different to what it was in college. And it's like, yeah, but it was, early 20s, it was a different world, and I had a different mindset compared to where I do now. And they were like, and what about Merrigan? When is he going to grow up? Do you know what I mean? So, like, there is a value.
Who said that?
I'll tell you after the show. For legal reasons, I won't say their name on air. But there is something about that thing of, by having a conversation and by sort of setting your stall out and saying, I think this about X. I'm open to being convinced otherwise. I'm open to being told otherwise, and I'm open to learning. But at least by setting your stall out, you're not trying to hide behind a thin veil of something, and you're not trying to do this faux impartiality when everyone has a bias to something. Everybody leans towards something. There's nobody in this world who has no opinion on stuff, like. And I think we'd all be in a better place if we called that shit out, like.
I couldn't agree more. I see it far too often where people say, oh, some of these hosts or moderators, and they just kind of push it, and you see it quite often in the discourse and how things are acceptable, how they're framed. So, the term loony left was very popular. You never heard anybody say radical right, right? Like we've seen all of these things. So I do feel, and then someone will shout, I'm a centrist. And if you go, let's investigate that. If you're a centrist, what does that mean? Well, that means you're kind of for the status quo. And what's the status quo? Well, the status quo is for right neoliberalism. Well, then are you really still a centrist? And you're going, well, I'm still also saying, like, let's be honest, some of them will go, well, I voted for repeal of marriage equality. And you're going, so you're a lifestyle liberal. And, and you have to try and tease this out. And like, I have people who've said these things to me, but you can't dismiss them. You have to have those conversations. But I think it would be very unfair of me to go on that basis and say, like that I don't believe that I struggle with the idea that people would say to me, Tony, you should be impartial. Why should I? I don't think I should be impartial.
You're pointing out what's fair and what's right and what's wrong, in my opinion, anyway.
Well, I want people to be challenged on those issues, and I want people to actually feel that there is an alternative, because quite often it's set up so we'll have this open debate. We'll get Paul Murphy in, we'll get someone in from Fine Gael and someone in from Fianna Fáil, and then we'll premise it all as, Paul, you didn't clap, and that's not actually an open debate. That's it, where we, it's actually Fox News are brilliant at it. They will literally say fair and balanced. They will say on the ticker tape fair and balanced, and they'll say we have let's take Palestine and Gaza or and Israel, something I've covered in great detail. They'll come in and they'll say we have X person, Y person, a Muslim, a Jew, an Israeli, a Palestinian, and they'll say, why are you firing rockets at Israel? And that's the framing. So once the media knows how to frame, and they're very good at it, and they are better at it than we are. Like we're working from this basis. So when you're trying to break through, it's about actually saying, no, I'm not going to play on your field anymore. I'm not playing on your pitch. I'm actually going to go play on a pitch over there where, and I'm hopeful that if I do it enough, people will come to watch the game over here as well. And that's kind of in what's happened. You know, we don't bullshit. There's no ads, no sponsors, there's no all of that stuff. We talk about it. We mean that, but unfortunately it means you have to grow organically. You have to have people come to where you are. And we're not trained broadcasters. Vicky's brilliant. You said about police and Mero, she's absolutely brilliant. Some of the stuff she's done, I won't lie to you. Garda commissioner has gotten in his car to drive to apologize to people that we've had on to talk on the police. Yeah. So
that should be covered. Like that should be covered in national publications, no?
I would have thought so, but there can be a snobbish element to, I tell you, like straight, we had a great story about the right to housing a few years ago, and it was brought in by, it happened on the podcast, and someone from the podcast decided, or someone in mainstream picked up on it, and Pat Leahy said, but that's just on that podcast. Yeah. And it never, no
matter where it is.
No, but it was never published. And then people have the temerity then to say to me on social media, you give Pat an awful hard time. And I'm going, that's because he's a gimp. You can put that if you want, lads. But like, it drives me mad that he's spiking stories that were deemed newsworthy by staff on his team because he said, well, the source I don't like.
But that happens, I think, quite a lot. And especially for like independent podcasts, we've had it a couple of times where, you know, people we've spoke to will have said something that's got a bit of attention, and then a certain news site has ran the quote and has covered everything we've talked about in the podcast without crediting us.
Yeah,
we've had guests on who told very personal stories, and then, you know, a week or two later, a podcast that's run by someone who is within one of the bigger media places essentially rinsed and repeated our episode with that guest. And you know, look, that's the game, that's the way it is.
No, it's not, Danny, though. It's wrong, because the simple fact, when you see the way you're saying that, and we have to be accepting that as independent, I find that really frustrating, because you shouldn't be scared to say that stuff publicly as well. You shouldn't be scared because, you know, I do it all the time, and I refer to it as a cult of civility in Ireland all the time. I have a big problem with it. It's. I think I said recently, and it's one of these things where I say regular reminder. You know, they don't like, what is it? They don't want you. They get upset that the guy who has a foot on his neck isn't complimentary with the quality of the leather that's in the shoe that's actually stamping on him. So that happens too often in these circumstances, like where. Someone will say, actually, Konstantin Gurdjieff, who I mentioned before we came on air, that the Russian economist, was on with Mario Rosenstock recently, and Mario asked him about his appearance on Dunphy. Konstantin's been doing our podcast for since it started. Like, he was like our 6th or 7th guest, and he said, "Oh, I enjoy doing the Tortoise Shack," and I just think, I'm looking at the guys going, I wonder how Go Loud feel about that, because I know it's not the kind of thing they like. They don't like it. I've spoken to people in Go Loud, and they'll say, "Oh, would you not come on board?" And it's like, why? You're going to insert ads into my content. It would be no good if I'm saying, we need to do something about build to rent and these vulture funds and X, Y, and Z, and you're saying brought to you by fucking AIB or whatever it is. No, I can't have it. You know what I mean? Just can't have it. So I think I get that, but I hate the fact that we almost have to suffer in silence, like, and say, yeah, no, it's okay. They took the idea. And I've had that where people have taken quotes and all the rest.
We tried it before with a publication, Danny, but it was probably too late, though. It's gone 30,000 shares without even crediting us.
Yeah, it wasn't that it was too late. It was just that it was, look, I'm probably trying to be modest. It was a good fucking story.
Yeah.
And because of that, it did get the attention. And I think it was alerted to us within a couple of hours of the story being published on that website. And when we challenged them, they put at the very bottom of the article, as heard on WTS pod or whatever it was. And then the editor sent us basically a PFO email, which was like, what would you like us to do about it, lads? And it was a very smarmy fuck off kind of thing,
Unfortunately for because I deal with a lot of, say, editors and across the different things, that I've gotten into lots of those disputes with them. Lots of them, and now you were probably much more polite than I was. So if they ever published the stuff I said, I called them like fucking thieves or whatever it was, and so and that's why I refer to that cult of civility, where someone will actually say, well, actually, you lose, Tony, because you called me a thief. And I'm going, but you still robbed me. It's like, no, it doesn't. This is what really pisses me off. We're supposed to be polite about that sort of stuff. And I've no time for it. And I don't know, maybe it's working with Martin as long as I am, that it kind of, when I knew Martin has cancer. Martin has been unwell for a number of years. Martin was supposed to, told to get his affairs in order. He had about 6 months left. He was stage 4. He, all of this sort of stuff, and he's still kicking around. And he's still causing trouble, and he still
went to the pack.
Yeah, like he does not care. He will fight, he's literally determined that he will expose corruption in what he's really passionate about in internal dealings on bogus self-employment that affect people in construction, in media, and in the courier industry, the likes of all these deliveries and stuff. And he's really passionate about it, but he suffers no fools. And then people go, oh yeah, but I saw him on Twitter calling someone a gobshite. And I'm going, that's your problem, really. Was your man a gobshite?
Yeah. Gobshite isn't calling somebody, forget out the language. Why are they a gobshite? Why is he calling him a gobshite? There's a bigger picture. Don't be getting offended by the gobshite part when there's bogus payments being paid and he's exploiting that. That's the story. I hate when people say that about articulation, and it's a real classism thing where they put you down on your articulation of something, when that's not. Forget about my articulation. The fucking story here is that someone's been done wrong here.
Like they want you. Yeah, my mother used to say to me, pronounce your T's, dude, all that sort of stuff, and I get it, but it's just also this kind of it permeates a lot of our society as well, where you see the frustration in someone as brilliant as Lynn Ruan, who is a fabulous legislator and one of let's tell the truth, she's one of my heroes, and don't tell her, she won't listen, please don't listen. but she gets, this kind of civility thing as well. What's she wearing on her feet? What earrings has she got? To the point where she was out with other members of the doll, and she's having a drink, and someone says she's laughing too loud.
I've read about that.
Yeah. This is the crap we're up against, and it is class though. It is, and I say that as someone who will admit straight out, I am now a middle class. Now, I wasn't born a middle class person, but I'm now a middle class person. But there's so little empathy in, I'll call it the Fine Gael, and I mean as in Fianna Fáil / Fine Gael. Some elements of that, they have so little empathy for that, whereby you have a guy who's going to be Taoiseach again in a few months, who made his career by saying welfare cheats cheat us all. And when I ran the numbers, the level of fraud was welfare fraud was 0.000, so 3068%. So that's what it was. And, and I do run my numbers. That's the one thing, that's what drives them mad, is that I have 20 years experience in finance, and it drives them fucking mad. They're going, some guy from Investec is going, former Investec economist, going mad on my Twitter mentions at the moment. And I'm going, but tell me where I'm wrong factually, because I put my sums up against any of yours,
That's baffled me, right? Because that is a tiny portion. 0.00068. I'm not suggesting we do the maths now or anything, but I would imagine the level of fraud amongst politicians per population or whatever is higher.
Well, let's just say that per white collar crime,
is
higher. one of my favorite sayings is, and I'm like a broken record, is the crime is what's legal, and quite often they sanitize what they do by, like, Fianna Fáil were a brilliant patronage machine when I was a young fella, and they people refer to the brown envelope thing. Fine Gael professionalized it, and they have really professionalized it. So it's really quite clear. Like, you can have someone like Michael Darcy, been a senator for Fine Gael, standing up and saying, we need to introduce this bill. It's going to normalize our financial system. And in the bill, I read the bloody thing, all 140 something pages of it. There was this thing that helped the sub funds that are preying on the Irish market. And a week later, he said, by the way, I can't do politics anymore. I want to resign as a senator to take up a role as a lobbyist for said funds. And you're thinking, that was legal. He was allowed to do that. And, and people come out and they say, well, we're going to call him into a committee to talk to him about it. But as soon as he's left public office, he no longer has to attend this committee. Yeah. And the media moves on 3 days later and he takes up his role. And it's just so obvious what's going on, and we can see it with our eyes, but we're supposed to say, actually, they're not the problem. The problem is your man who is driving a white van, painting and decorating, and is taking a few jobs for cash. He's the problem, actually. It's him.
Yeah, your man doing the Nixers on a Saturday is the problem.
Yeah. And if you put that, like, if your man was doing Nixers 365 days a year, 24/7, he wouldn't even fill a drop in a bucket compared to some of the fines that some of our financial institutions have had to do for what they've been doing, and they still getting off lightly.
But that type of messaging, though, that type of messaging by Leo Varadkar that time, it does. If you're in a party of 6 or 7 at your local pub on a Saturday and you're discussing the week's politics, and 4 of you have a house and 3 of you are saving for a house, his type of rhetoric will start an argument in that there's one side saying, no, like, he shouldn't be going after those people because it's minuscule, it's not substantial. And then you have another group of the party saying, well, look, so-and-so has a house down the road. Yeah. What do they do? And it causes, like, one for a better term, kind of internal class specking. The working class are going at each other then, because it's like they're pointing out that their next door neighbour got a house, but as far as they can tell, they don't work. But I work and I save, and it's nearly saying, I just hate that divide and conquer.
Yeah, and it's divide and rule.
Divide and rule. It's just, it can be very, when you're out, like, I'm a 37-year-old man with a disability that lives in the back of my parents' house. In terms of the building developers, they don't really build for people with disabilities. No. The law currently states that new houses have to be visitable by people with disabilities, but not habitable. So my prospects are quite low in a good job. And yet I experience those type of conversations in the pub weekly, and you're kind of going, lads, you're talking like that to me. I'm in that minority.
And see the way you've said you have a good job. You're in the minority of people with disabilities.
Exactly.
Because people with disabilities are like overwhelmingly living in what's deemed at risk of poverty situations.
Yeah.
And when you talk about housing, I saw in I think it was one of the county councils yesterday published a new plan for development. I think it was something. Let's. I could be wrong, but I think it was like 43 apartments, one wheelchair space, and you're looking, and these absolutely don't accommodate and they don't bring people in, but it's not. It goes back to what Tom Clonan always said to me years ago. He said my son. He would say my son. Society disables him more than his own issues. They disable him all the time. Alana Fitzpatrick, who came here to do a podcast a few times, and even she has to book a she's coming in from say Cavan. She has to make sure that there's a wheelchair accessible bus. What time is that one at tomorrow? And she might have to give X person 24. Now, some of that's gotten better over the last little while, and it's slowly getting
so
better.
Hit and miss, though. The infrastructure is so hit and miss.
Yeah,
I was going to a stag about 8 years ago in Prague, and the air coach had just, they just said, "Oh, fantastic new wheelchair accessible air coaches." So I was like, "Oh yeah, grand, I'll ring ahead. I'll tell them, blah, blah, blah." The coach was down the end of the dual carriageway where I live at about 6:30 in the morning. And the driver said, "It doesn't work. The lift doesn't work." So it was fine because I was with my friends and my friends lugged me on. But if I was on my own, I'd it's pathetic.
We had a really embarrassing situation pre-COVID. One of our last live shows was in Dublin city centre, the venue. So I don't want to name them just because they were okay in the end. But I had said at the outset, is it accessible? And they had said yes. So I said, grand. So I went and checked. And I knew someone was coming who was in a wheelchair. So we arrived, we were setting up, and I said, where's the lift? Because it wasn't on the first, wasn't on the ground floor. And they said it's over there, but I think it's out of service. And I went, and someone said, "Oh, look, what can we do? What can we do?" I said, "I'll tell you what you can fucking do. See all your space you have downstairs. You can move everything here downstairs." And in fairness, I mentioned Lynn, Lynn and myself carried tables and stuff down the stairs, and we set up and when people arrived, they had no idea. But I was furious because they literally went, when they were selling the thing to me, "Yes, we have it." And it was like, but God, if you need to use it, go and shite, and no, it is very much an afterthought for much like we're going full circle, much like talking about people in the Fianna Fáil health it's like afterthoughts,
Yeah. You mentioned earlier in the conversation about, columnists and all with, certain directions and certain things that they're commenting on weekly. And I do find some of your black comedy when you tweet very, very funny, but it also comes up. It also is true. You kind of say something on the Tuesday, article by so-and-so written in the Irish Times or the Independent. Next minute on a Sunday, there you go. Like, what I've noticed, particularly with the invasion in Ukraine, in terms of column inches being given to the suggestion that we should join NATO and, give up neutrality. That is one of many subjects where the communists have been tone deaf to the public. Where's the balance there in print media when we're seeing 6 to 8, 9, 10 articles over the course of 10 weeks kind of promoting this as such, and we don't see the publication of, well, no, we shouldn't join NATO. And then when the polls are done, it's like 68 to 32 saying, no, we shouldn't join NATO. Like, what have we seen it with the last election before COVID, where publications were tone deaf to what society was thinking?
We have a problem in the commentariat. It looks and sounds a lot like itself. And there's acceptable voices, they'll say to you, don't worry, we have Fintan O'Toole to write a kind of lefty leaning piece. And you're like, with all due respect to Fintan, he's never going to be calling for, he's acceptable to the management class, and that's fine. But you'll have all of these other people who are going to come at us and say, here's the agenda and this is how we'll do it, but we'll debate it again within those parameters. So take NATO, for example. No one actually, they keep referring to NATO as a defensive organization. But if that was the case, why is NATO expansion always on the agenda? Now, I'm opposed to us joining NATO. I'm not opposed to other countries having the right to choose whether they join or leave. That's their democratic choice. That's up to them. What I won't have told about is that we need an open debate on something, and then you get to say, okay, let's have the debate, and they go, and then they say something like, well, no, you're pointing out too many facts here. Like you're pointing at Shannon. You're saying, well, we've actually been running the war machine for the US for a number of years. We've helped facilitate all of this. Don't talk about that. Don't point at that. That's again back to this cult of civility thing. And quite often they're out of touch. Rita Fagan is someone I love to quote, and which is why one of the reasons I always find it's always better to talk to people I've spoken to than to talk to me. Rita Fagan is involved in Dolphin House. She's amazing. She's a genuine lifelong activist. But she made a point at a thing I was at a few years ago, and she said that basically the problem we have with a lot of our political correspondents and commentariat is that they spend too much time in Leinster House and not enough time in Dolphin House. So for people who don't get that, the Dolphins barn was kind of, it's rough and ready and up and coming, and people lose sight of what actually fucking matters. And when you're in that bubble, you actually start to trade the rumors. So the rumors become your stories. You're able to sit around and go, an anonymous source tells me that he's unhappy with Graham's haircut. And, and we'll talk about Graham's haircut, and everybody will go, that was really mean how they talked about Graham's haircut. And you're going, what the fuck is that doing for building people accessible homes in Crumlin that we need? Or what's that going to do for, but that tittle tattle has become currency now. And it's there's far too much of that in political circles, to the detriment of, I don't know. It feels like I'm picking on the Irish Times. I'm not. I'm not. But I don't know when's the last time they broke a story that was actually of any relevance. I mean, we can go back to the Leo Varadkar thing. Leo Varadkar, in my opinion, would not be tarnished had the Irish Times broken the story about him leaking the contract, but it was because Village magazine broke it, and it was easier to dismiss Village magazine than it was if it had gone in the Irish Times or the Irish Independent or the Irish Examiner. And I think we have to question that. We have to look at ourselves as a society and wonder why is that? I think that's a relevant point of view.
It is because we had his supporters say that Leo was going to wipe the floor with the Village in court. Like if the Irish Times had broken that news, what would the reaction be?
Yeah, I genuinely think if the Irish Times had broken that story, within 2 weeks he would have had to resign from public office.
Why didn't they touch the story? Because there's no way that everyone behind the scenes had an idea of what was going on there, surely.
Oh yeah, I mean, like I let people live behind the tent. I knew the story was coming.
Yeah.
I was aware of what had happened, and I looked at it and I thought to myself, going, "Oh my God, this is like he's toast," because he's clearly. Like people say, oh, he got no financial benefit, and but you don't have to benefit financially from giving something. You just need to get agency. So a rival union, and he was coming up to an election. The rival union were saying, we're going to protest against you, and he was saying, well, I'll give you this and appeasement. So appeasement is also a way of benefiting from something politically. He benefited from that. There's no question about it. He stood up in the Dáil and he admitted he did it.
So if he stood up in the Dáil and admitted it, why is there still an investigation? Why haven't we heard the results?
Oh, I think, you know what? Yeah, we get ourselves in trouble here, but I think there's been too many. It's gone to the point where we know there's other players involved, people giving evidence. Like Matthew O'Toole, who was at the center of this, I've interviewed him several times. Matthew O'Toole was always really good to me as a GP. He's worked with Safety Net. I know he was involved in that. I don't know what his take on this is, but I know Shea Bowe's take on it. I know Michael Smith's take on it, and we all bloody well know, based on what he put up on screen in the web, what Paddy Cosgrave's take on this is. Yeah. But there is a case of also that, they don't like that messenger either. And I'm no apologist for Paddy Cosgrave. He goes on he goes and does his own thing. Thankfully for Paddy has what Martin commonly refers to as "fuck you" money. Okay, so we can afford to go and do that sort of stuff. But I'd let him off. But it would worry me that the DPP is looking at something like that, saying the guards are going to pass the DPP, and we need a fudge here to make this go away now. It's because it's so long. It's over a year that since they said, look, it's nearly wrapped up, kind of thing. And here we are, and he's
going to be a Taoiseach again in 7 months.
And he probably will be, unless now if it goes to DPP, I can't see Fine Gael have a leg to stand on. They can't stand by him. They can't. I mean, you can't have someone in, like, I don't know where either you guys work, but if in financial services, I had to do a fitness and probity thing every bloody year. And it would always, you'd fill in, you'd have to give them your statements, any details of loans. You do an Irish Credit Bureau search. You might have to go authorize them to do searches, legal searches, in case there was anything outstanding on you. And you'd have to give them access if they wanted to do Garda stuff. Had to do it all the time. And if I didn't do it, I wouldn't have been deemed a fit and proper person to give financial voice on certain things. And this guy is going to go and take the top office in the land, having said, I leaked a confidential agreement potentially worth millions of euro. Seems very strange.
It's a weird one. And like, for all the sort of stick Bertie Ahern used to get as the Teflon Taoiseach, I think, Leo, there's an element of being the Teflon Taoiseach with this, because I think, I'm, for the want of a better term, a lesser politician would have fallen on this one. They wouldn't have survived it. And when I say a lesser politician, I'm not making Leo out to be a great politician. I mean, he has that sort of ruthlessness, I think, that survive at all costs. There's a bit of Frank Underwood in him, I think. Do you know what I mean?
I'd love to. I agree. Like, he was brilliant how he became Taoiseach. It was over. It was like, do you know what they called the 8-day war? There was no 8-day war. It was over in 4 hours because the Israelis blew up all of the Egyptian military hardware and air force on the ground before it ever got going. And that was the truth. So then they just marched forward for 7 more days and won. Okay. Now that's an oversimplification. Leo Varadkar, when he became Taoiseach by becoming leader of Fine Gael, it was over, because he had already got Pascal Donoghue lined up. He'd all of these people. And as soon as the man had registered leoforleader.com fucking years ago, right? He knew, and that, like, I've balls up the actual website, but he had it registered. Yeah. This plan was a long time in the making. He sprung the trap. Coveney walked into it, had no idea, and it was over. And then they went to, people forget, Leo Varadkar lost the vote from the Fine Gael membership. But it didn't matter, because Fine Gael doesn't have a one vote, one person, one
parliamentary party, yeah.
Exactly. So he already had it stitched up. It was over.
That's real shadowy figures doing that, isn't it?
Oh yeah, we can't. It's hilarious when it comes to certain other parties how it's dealt with. But that was really good. But since then, Danny, he's been a nightmare. He's lost every election. He's decreased their vote, and I think it's because people can sense that actually this guy isn't the sum of his parts. And that's my take on it. That I actually thought genuinely it was a brilliant day, and I still think it'll go down in history as a great day. That we had a person from a diverse background, a son of an immigrant, a person, a member of the LGBT community, all of these things, and no one, in my opinion, outside of some head cases, batted an eyelid. We thought it was great, and I genuinely I think it's remarkable that that there is absolutely homophobia. There's all of these awful things, and no one should be put to it. But I genuinely think people looked at Leo Varadkar on his merits, and he's been in government now since 2011. And on his merits, we've decided, actually, we've given you a good run of it, pal. And I don't think he's like, his opinion, his approval ratings will tell you he's not the guy that people thought was going to actually change this country, unfortunately.
Yeah, it's I fully agree with you. It was brilliant, and nobody batted an eyelid, and kind of there was this moment of everyone thinking, like, this is progress. This is a real moment for progress. And
it was a moment. Think about that. It's just amazing, and no one actually decided. No, it was brilliant, and we should be proud of that. I think there's a lot of great things about it. Like, see, you always get these sex scandals in the UK and all this. We don't have sex scandals here. It's not that people aren't having sex. Of course they are. We just don't have that.
Just don't care.
We let people live and let live, and we get on with it.
That opens up another question, though, in terms of, and we're saying, like, how is Leo still around if this investigation hanging over him and everything else? But then, are we just living in an age where there is just this begrudging acceptance and begrudging tolerance of slapstick politicians who can survive any controversy? Like, you see it in America constantly, you see it in the UK at the moment. What is it going to take for Boris Johnson to fall? I mean, he's like a fucking weeble. He just goes from side to side, but never actually stays down.
It's a great question because I think they kept, I made a joke, and Mary, you refer to my really bad jokes that I make on social media all the time, and they're generally rubbish. But one of them was, but one of them, yeah, exactly. One of them was like Leo Varadkar walked into a bar, but unfortunately Boris and Trump had set it so low that it barely grazed his ankle. And there's an element of that, Danny, that's where we are now. That we have this kind of like not great, not very fond of your man, but at least he's not that madman over there. Or at least he's not that, we've kind of gotten away from a culture of accountability as well. Like, there was a time when people did something in politics and then they would resign. But that hasn't happened for a long time now. People haven't. I think Trevor Sargent was the last guy who said when he ran for the Greens, he said, "I don't want to go. I will not go into government with those guys." And then, of course, they agreed to go into government, and he went. They've struck the program for government, and he resigned.
Yeah.
And you're going, wow, integrity. And now you don't get that sort of stuff. And that's not, it's not saying, it was so much better in my day. But but there is an element whereby people are now so.
But it's that 24-hour news cycle, though, Danny.
Yeah.
It's like Boris' controversy was Monday. It's now Thursday. It's almost like, and I don't agree with this, but it's almost like, who cares? Like, if you look at the Golfgate scenario, when it was broke, the country was going up in arms about that, rightfully so, going mad. But then we had think pieces 10 months later, or a couple of months later, saying, when the court case eventually, finished, you had think pieces saying, did they really do that bad? Did Phil Hogan?
Well, no.
We
shot ourselves in the foot because we got rid of Phil Hogan. And
that's the type of news cycle we're in now. I seen David Quinn reporting the other day that he misses Owen Harris, and the media misses Owen Harris. Owen Harris had 17 anonymous Twitter accounts. Do you know what I mean? And
it's David Quinn, though, man.
I know it's David Quinn.
I know, but he gets to write in a national newspaper at least once a week. Like yeah, he's bounced about the place, if I'm telling you. But there's so much of that. Like that's a huge issue. Like, as I said, and no one's calling for a marginal. Like, look, let's not have any Catholic voices. No, saying that. But we need to investigate why we're being said. Where's this? Because it's always one of the beauties of, like, say, this conversation is we don't have to have false balance. We don't have to then finish this conversation and then say, can you now get in someone who thinks Leo Varadkar's great to call Tony Groves a bollocks? You don't have to do that. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But,
it's weird, though, because I've just had a text from one of Leo's people.
Yeah. And fair is fair. Like, I know, he's got a point, but we don't have to have that. And there's too much of that. They will say stuff to you like, we're going to cover X thing, and then we need like, repeal was the best ever. We're now covering this protest outside, but we're going to go to the bishop for a comment. I mean, it just none of that ever makes any sense. I do think our commentariat is struggling, but the only thing I'll say that gives me hope is conversation like today, conversations that we continually have, things that we do on the Tortoise Shack, and knowing that the audience is there for those. That, whereas I know, circulations of some of these things are going down, and that's a negative as well, because there's great journalists doing brilliant work.
There is absolutely, and there is a whole like in broadcast and in the like I think question and answer should be brought back, because I think the public would be able to ask questions to a panel of 6 people, which was made up of government, columnists, whatever. The once off Claire Bourne shows where you were in the audience, Tony Max Groves, that type of way.
It is Tony, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
it is Tony, isn't it?
I know, but like that, it's kind of
do we miss Vincent Brown so much that nobody can kind of fill that coal?
That bothers me a lot. I'm gonna get annoyed with you all now. Everybody goes, it hasn't happened since Vincent. It hasn't happened since Vincent because they haven't tried people who are inclined like Vincent. They've decided that we want.
Why though?
Well, because it's like no offense to Claire Byrne, but I think it's kind of like Now TV for politics, Now Magazine for politics, I should say. They're going to have that in this slaps, in this way, saying similar stuff on Tonight Virgin Media, where we're going to I got asked to do Eating with the Fucking Enemy, lads. I'm like going, that just sounds boring to me.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. I'm like, I said, you're going to ask me to talk to an economist who I probably already know, who I've probably already interviewed 3 or 4 times, and who I probably know what he's already going to say. Yeah. And it's just boring. But I do find the mediators and the facilitators of these conversations are too safe. They're not, there's a consensus when you go into a room where you do something like Claire Byrne. There was a consensus there. Where I'm here tonight to talk about the rise of Sinn Féin. I tore up the script and decided I wasn't going to go with that. And it just showed that's not to say I did great, but it's just to show. Someone said to me, "You did great." I said, "Did I do great, or the rest of them just abject at what they're supposed to be doing?" And it worries me that someone like me, who's untrained, albeit with fucking hundreds of hours of broadcasting behind them, was able to just do that in 2 minutes. What should have been done ages ago. So when you talk about missing Vincent Browne, what we're missing is actually that forum of actually giving people proper robust thing and none of this fake let them talk down the clock. And I do think some people are very uninformed when they're interviewing now. Like you'll have a minister sit down, or a junior minister usually, and they'll say, we've produced 21,000 homes last year, and no one's quick enough to say, no, you haven't. The combined local authorities have produced actually only 980 in Dublin. Where are you getting these numbers from? And you're like, oh, well, you're taking them all from X, private developer who's selling them to a build to rent. You should be on top of your brief. If I can come up, if I know some of these things and I'm not paid to do it, and you're being paid, some of these people are being paid extraordinary sums of money. I don't get why they don't have it, because they have producers, they have crew, they have teams, they have people who actually hand them their notes. Sure, I think.
But I'm assuming Vincent Browne's production team and researchers and all are still in the industry. I mean, they seen what he brought. If you look at the conversation on social media, everyone loved Vincent. Everyone from who he was picking up for loved him. So is it a case of when Vincent retired, they were like, "Oh, thank God for that," or was it a case of why didn't they replace him with someone who was?
They went with the centrist dads of Matt Cooper and Ivan Yates, and Ivan Yates again, ex Fine Gael, and is able to pretend that he's a centrist, and Matt Cooper, who again, lads, feel free to cut this out, because whenever you say his name, people go mad. But he's followed Dennis O'Brien through his life, and Dennis O'Brien's only given a couple of one-to-one interviews, and he's given them to Matt. And there has been and that's not to say that that's not a course, interview Dennis O'Brien when you get to do it. But one of the reasons you get to interview him, I'm sure, in my opinion, is that he deems you as a safe pair of hands.
Yeah.
People get it, go bring up the bogeyman for a moment. Paddy Cosgrave's a bogeyman. He wanted to bring Marine Le Pen to Webb Summit. He backed out of it. I think it was everybody was fair to have a go at him. Absolutely everybody was fair. But no one still jumps up and down about Matt Cooper having on Katie Thompson and same with Ryan Tubridy several times on the Late Late Show. And what's the one from Fox News who said the kids in cages were crisis actors? Who Matt
Cooper? Not Ingram.
No, woman, lovely blonde-haired woman who said,
Laura Ingram is the only one that's coming into my head. But it wasn't her.
And there they are, and it's like, but we
Katie Hopkins is one, wasn't it?
Yeah, but Katie Hopkins is absolutely was doing almost regular shots on Irish media, and she said Palestinians are vermin. And we're supposed to say, "Oh, that's okay." Look, I do think we're underserved by our commentariat and by our media. You want Vincent Browne, though. You have to allow people actually make mistakes. You have to allow people to be brave and go on the air and say something that risks putting someone in a political party's nose out of joint, risks maybe upsetting maybe a sponsor or two. And I don't know if anybody has the stomach for that now. I don't know if they have the stomach for it, because it's too sanitized. they have to be careful about this, and we have to give fair balance to that. And Vincent didn't give a shit about any of that. And there are a lot of people who are capable of doing that. Probably a lot of people right now hosting shows are capable of doing that, but they work within the parameters that they're given. They
if you look back at the interview with Sarah McInerney and Owen Harris and Sarah McInerney and Leo Varadkar, I mean, that was just brilliant. Like that was brilliant radio. Like, that's particularly the Leo Varadkar one where
and I remind you, Sarah McInerney was dumped by News Talk to bring back in Ivan Yates.
Baffling.
But I would say
that even then, like, and now looking back on it, it's even more so. Like,
but I would say, like, when Gavin Riley has stepped in on the Tonight Show, I mean, I would say politicians are kind of saying, "Oh no, here's Gavin." When politicians get Sarah McInerney, I genuinely believe they're kind of going, "Oh no, Sarah McInerney."
Some of them ask not to have Sarah.
There you go. Like, do you know what I mean? Need more of that.
It's weird though, because like there is an element of and I'm constantly saying to people, like, fucking buy a newspaper, support media, because the alternative is far worse. But at the same time, it's not a perfect media landscape at all within the country, and it's a very safe ground for the people who shouldn't feel comfortable. People, like, politicians in this country, if their phone starts ringing and they see a journalist's name on their screen, they should be shitting themselves. Oh no, what's this fucker ringing me for?
Yeah.
But instead they answer it with glee. It's like, hey pal, how are you? Kind of thing. And we do have some great journalists, but there's a very cozy relationship there that I think we should all be a little bit kind of uneasy about. At
least skeptical. I mean, we've seen the last election, so many people making the jump from political correspondent to special advisor. Lots of them. Lots and lots of them.
Yeah.
And one of them, but one of my favorite moments was actually after the Fine Gael leadership election, and Leo had won. And he came outside after talking to the party, and then he came outside to meet the press. And he stood up and he said, spoke for 15 seconds, and the man said, "Look, we're going to take questions from the audience, and you can be mad at me all you want, Kevin Doyle." But he said, he goes, "I'll take the first question. Kev, how are you doing?" And it was just so familiar. It was, it wasn't Kevin Doyle Irish Independent. It wasn't Kevin Doyle Irish News and Media. It wasn't Kevin Doyle political editor, or anything like that. It was Kev. And you just think to yourself, going, if I was Kev, I'd be hiding under the table now, because I would hate to think that a journalist is like, "Pal, yo," and it just you shouldn't want that cozy relationship.
Cozy, exactly.
And I think I do think we got to ask more questions of that, and we got to wonder why. And I'm going to correct myself now. A lot of the journalists who make the jump, I don't blame them as well, because they probably doubled their wages.
But yeah, I mean, the one that always jumps out to me is Chris Donoghue, who used to be on News Talk.
Yeah.
And I would say, it was a no-brainer for him to jump from, what was it, News Talk Breakfast, probably getting up at 4 a.m. or whatever it was. The radio presenters, they're not on
for a third of what he got paid by Simon Coveney, I'd imagine.
And that's it. So, from that point of view, you probably go, I don't blame them in that respect, but. In a few years' time, will Chris go back to doing journalism? And then
can't. If they let people back in, I genuinely think. I don't think you can go from one to the other. Do you know what? I know we've gone on too long, but one of the things that's funny is they go, say, journalism, special advisor, lobbyist, and that's where they go next. And that's where they go next, and that is a serious
lobbyism
problem.
Is a Beckin cesspit.
Oh my God! Like you see, you probably see me talk about it all the time. I every few weeks I check the lobbying register, and I go into it and I read this and I go, oh, is that what that fucker's doing now? And then and it just drives me mad. Like when the story came out about Ed Brophy recently lobbying on behalf of a company trying to do build to rent. I was able to put up the screen print from last November where I said to Ed, I hope you're not in the whole lobbying game now, Ed. And he came up, he goes, Jesus Christ, Tony, do your research, blah, blah, blah. And I went, lads, if a gobshite like me saw it last November on the register, it took until April this year for it to be broken in the media. But nonetheless, off you go,
This is it. It's it's a weird world we live in, lads. It's a weird world we live in.
Tony, thanks so much for your time. You've
No
been
worries.
very generous. It's been great, and we're definitely going to get you on again.
Yeah. Well, look, and can I say one thing? And next time we're doing the live show, we'll get the two of you along. We'll make a night of it.
Defo.
Yep.
Have you any more lined up?
Late May. We're looking
Late
at.
May.
We're looking
Are
at.
you going to do a monthly now, Tony? Or
It looks like we're going to take up residency in the Sugar Club every sort of 4 to 6 weeks.
Lovely.
So
it's a lovely venue, man. It's a lovely venue.
Yeah. It was. I'm just hoping there's like when you were there, Mero. Remember David O'Doherty was sitting there.
Yeah.
Last Sunday it was Killian Sunderman, who I happen to think is just no offense to Lord Doddlesworth, but he doesn't have as good hair as Sunderman, but yeah, so I need there better be another comedian in the audience or I'm going to be very upset.
Lovely.
Well, if you're looking for comedians with good hair, Tom O'Mahony's the only show in town. But anyway, that's a story for another day. Tony, it's been a pleasure, man. Congrats on everything with Tortoise Shack, even if it was an accident. It's a wonderful accident. And
like most of the kids in Ireland.
I've two of them, Shay nothing.
Tony, is there anything else? Is there anything coming up? Any pods or
lads?
You're probably busy.
I'm doing, as you know, we do our show on Sundays with our patrons. So patrons get to come and we do the rundown of the week. So we try to do sort of a talk show with our patrons every Sunday. It's great crack. But I'm going up north, I think, on Tuesday for the assembly elections. Myself,
Tuesday week, isn't it?
And I'm going up to start. I'm gonna go meet a few people who are candidates and a few people of interest. Hopefully, do you know there's only one person? There's only one councillor in Northern Ireland who's a person of colour. She's in the SDLP in Derry. So I'm trying to find people who are outside that norm, and I'm trying to plan that.
I seen a Catholic running for the DUP.
Yeah, well, I've been put in touch with a gay person from the UUP who I'm hoping to talk to, and they keep saying to me, "Do you know we have a gay person?" And I'm like, don't be saying that if you're the press officer so loud. Yeah. Just lads, play. You don't need to play that up as much as you did right now. Look, but yeah, Brilliant. It's all good. Thanks so much, and
thanks, Tony.
I appreciate it.
Gentlemen.
Cheers, Tony. Take care, man. All the best. Cheers. I've a lot of time for Tony and what Tony does with Tortoise Shack.
Yeah, absolutely. And
I want
people voices and stuff.
Exactly. A Trickster's World on the Twitter machine, lads, if you're looking for him.
Definitely go to him at Trickster's World, because when as we discussed, when he's not joking and when he's not taking the piss, he mostly, as its bio says, that it's mostly podcast stuff and bad jokes, but it's also a lot of current affairs, factual current affairs, because he is an analytic man, he is a factual man, and he will have conversation in fact. Yeah. So great podcast. I definitely want to have him on again to talk further about things. And I went to his live show back in March in the Sugar Club, and I'll be going again in May because it is a great night.
Absolutely, yeah. I haven't got to one yet, but it is on my list of things to do. I'm still in that phase post COVID where and it's probably because the wedding is on the horizon, and I'm not good at crowds yet. I haven't built up me bravery pants aren't fitting me just yet. So I stay clear of crowds because I'm like, I don't get COVID pre-wedding.
Well, with this, we record this obviously midweek before it goes out. Tony's just after going. We had a great chat, but he's just after tweeting, and this is such as the humor of Tony. Just had a great chat with Merrigan Mania and Danjo Murray for what they called an upcoming filler of What's the Story podcast. Tony is not an upcoming filler. Tony is the main event.
His name will be on the marquee.
Tony,
he's
facts.
He's not jerking any curtain. He's closing the show. You know what I mean?
That's it. Exactly.
He's headlining our WrestleMania right now. That's a fact. But do check out Tortoise Shack. Check out Echo Chamber podcast. I'm a big fan of Glow West. Dr. Caroline West is somebody I have a lot of time for. Enjoy her podcast immensely. But yeah, look, lads, the podcast world is mad, and everyone and their granny is doing one now, and everyone and their granny in the media has multiple podcasts. But little independent podcasts that pop up are well worth paying attention to. And as Tony said in that podcast, you will hear from voices you don't get to hear elsewhere, and that's important. Check your sources always, lads, because you need to hear the story from every angle possible. Absolutely.
And if you follow as well, like Tony's partner in the podcast game, Martin. Martin is a kind of a bundle of facts as well in terms of his coverage. He's a whistleblower, and he's been in front of the Public Accounts Committee as well. So I would urge people to follow him at William H. Boney 1, William H. Boney 1, Martin McMahon, and he is a treasure trove of facts and stories and opinion. As Tony said on the pod, that you might call somebody a gobshite, but you know, why are they a gobshite?
Those are the questions that need to be asked and answered, Graham. But yeah, look, that was it. It was a nice one to come back to. Really enjoyed that. Tony's a gent. And no, I'm not going to say anything about future episodes because fuck knows what will happen.
No, don't say anything.
No, I'm not putting it. I put the mockers on us once before. I will not make
3 weeks lined up, but they might go tits up.
Yeah,
we won't talk about it again in June.
Let's see what happens. But until then, lads, look, you can get the previous 261 episodes that precede this one on Apple Podcasts, on Spotify, on Stitcher, Podbean, Podcast Addict, Podcast Republic. I botched this because we haven't done it in so long. Anywhere and everywhere there's a podcast, you just search WTS Pod and you will find us. He is at American Mania. I am at Dan Joe Murray. Our guest is at Trickster's World. And check out Porto Shack podcasts. Graham American, until next time.
Clear eyes.
Full hearts.
Can't lose.
Too sweet.
Too sweet.